Hello, welcome to the self-learning podcast by Dr. Sushma Singh. Let us start discussion on Unit 19, State Power as elaborated by Marx, Weber, Parsons and others. And we are continuing our topic Marx on state. In his later writings, Marx made various modifications of and reservations about these earlier views. In his later writings, which were more empirical, he views and talks about different sections of bourgeoisie engaged in political struggles through and over the state. Here he suggests a different model of the state, the arbiter model in the 18th Bromley of Louis Bonaparte. He sketches the modern state in such a way as to suggest its relative autonomy from the interests of the bourgeoisie. The modern state has grown so strong that in exceptional moments when bourgeoisie cannot completely dominate the other classes against which it must struggle, the state may become an arena for competing interest and apparent mediated and may even act independently to limit the power of the bourgeoisie. For example, the Factory Acts and the arguments over the Corn Laws in UK in the 1840s can be seen as a struggle between industrial bourgeoisie and the agricultural bourgeoisie. He also talks about the state being controlled by people who do not belong to the dominant class, but nevertheless exercise power in the interest of the dominant class. For example, in UK, by the end of the 19th century, though the central governing body constituted by the land-owning class, they exercised power in the interest of the industrial bourgeoisie. This reaches to the conclusion that whoever comes to power, they represent the interest of the dominant class in the capitalist society. This is because of the economic development of the societies. The state has to protect the interest of the dominant class. In his latest works, Marx suggested a third model of state, the functionalist model in the Capital, Volume 3. He depicts state as supernatural, determined entirely by changes in the economic base of the society. He explains if capitalism is to survive, it requires a reasonably healthy workforce educated to a level necessary to operate at the relevant level of technological development, and it needs to ensure that the next generation is raised in a reasonable way to whatever standards are required. The state develops in order to fulfill these needs. In Marxist view, in a class society, superstructure is indispensable to its survival. It represents the society's cultural characteristics and the institutions that promote these characteristics. Its infrastructure, its class-based mode of production, survives so long as class character of the society remains unrecognized or is considered legitimate by those whom it subordinates. The superstructure state as a prominent institution ensures that this happens. That means the state essentially functions as a system integrator. This is how Marx views state as working in the interest of the ruling class because it is working to reproduce the sort of economic and social system that favors the class that rules. For Marx, in any state, the dominant classes try to promote and protect their own interest as against the interest of other classes and formulate the laws. And thus, the purpose of the state is to protect private property, and its function is to oppress the non possessing class in the interest of the possessing class, irrespective of the form of the state, whether democratic, republic, or monarchy. It is used as an agency for the oppression of one class by another. It is only the class interests that are represented at the political level, and ultimately the economic power will determine how state power is to be used. Marx states that the system integration in capitalism is constantly threatened by class conflict and is supported by the state and by ruling ideologies. He predicts the class struggle in the capitalist society necessarily leads to the dictatorship of the proletariat, and through the dictatorship of the proletariat there would be the abolition of all classes through a revolutionary transformation and the establishment of classless society, the communist society. When the classless society is established and there is no suppressive function for the state, it would be required only to perform the economic functions. The abolition of class distinctions would also lead to the fulfillment of the political functions of the state, and the people will be accustomed to the voluntary performance of their social responsibilities and the observation of the rules of the socialist life. At this stage, there would be no necessity of state, and according to Marx, the state would wither away. Now, let us wind up the session and take rest. Thank you very much for engaging yourself with the self learning podcast.